Dr. Nadolsky, welcome to the Active Life Podcast.
It's been a moment because we've been trying to get this scheduled. Almost did it in person, but couldn't make that work.
Listen, it's okay. I make an exception for you.
I appreciate that.
It's so funny because every time I go online and speak negatively or critically or curiously, no matter how I do it, about GLP-1 inhibitors, Ozempic, Wegovy, things of that nature, I get a chorus of, yeah, right, Dr. Nadolsky will show you. And I'm like, listen, I'm not even saying things he's not saying, except the way I'm perceiving them is different than the way he's perceiving them potentially. So I'm really excited to talk to you about it today.
Yeah, let's do it.
So I want to start off by getting us on the same page, if that's cool.
Yeah, sounds good.
I understand that when you talk about things on social media, there is going to be a way, it's very difficult to include nuance in a post on social media if you want anybody to learn anything from the post, because the more nuance there is in a post, the less likely somebody actually sees it or listens to it or sticks around for it.
Right? That's true.
So I like to have the nuance in the caption under the post, which I found that most people don't actually even read.
That's correct.
So I think that you and I agree on something, and I just want to make sure that we do before we even go anywhere. People who are dealing with obesity are typically there not as a byproduct of just making bad choices over and over and over and over again. It's a confluence of the genetics that they were born with and the environment that they find themselves in, where for some people, I could eat one piece of pizza and I'm like, I'm good. I had a craving for a piece of pizza. I ate it. I feel good. Somebody else doesn't get the same satisfaction out of one. They need to eat 2, 3, 4, 5. And the thought process could be, why don't you just stop at one? Well, because we had the same goal and it took me 5 to get there.
Yeah.
And then at the same time, somebody else could eat one and they just don't burn it off as easily. Would you agree that those are true? I've heard you say the sentence that
no, that's ultimately right. I think when people are like, oh, obesity is a choice because they're choosing to put what's in their mouth, and it's like, God, yeah, there's some truth to that. We have some control over what we eat, but over time, and like you said, with we're surrounded with, and it's not just genetics. Clearly, the upbringing can influence how we perceive and view food. So, but the genetics really come into play with the appetite. Like you said, like I can tell my genetics want me to be thinner. I can tell where I was a heavyweight wrestler, but I had to like force feed myself to be a heavyweight wrestler. Mm-hmm. Whereas like after college wrestling was done, it was like, I could tell my body, I could just eat to satiety and my body would just whittle away. Trying to lift weights to make sure I maintain most of that muscle mass, but it's still difficult. But I can tell that, whereas other people, like you said, some person, it seems like they eat whatever they want, burgers, fries, whatever, but they actually they might not eat that much of it, or they compensate later in the day subconsciously by not eating as much later. So it's really interesting viewing it like that, because then people are like, well, then you're saying we don't have any control. It's like, I'm not saying that. It's just that we're not as much in the driver's seat as we think. So I agree with how you explain that.
Well, what I'm hearing you say there is that we do have the power of modulating how our genetics manifest in some way, shape, or form. But sometimes it's after the fact. We didn't realize it while it was happening. And now, okay,
yes, that's right. That's right.
Right. So, okay. So the next thing then is, if we look back in time to like the 1930s, 40s, 50s, 60s, even, maybe even the 70s, I think it was, what was it, 67 or 76 when the whole margarine thing started? I don't know the chart that shows the selective.
Yeah. Yes. Right. About. Yeah. You can see, you can see this slowly. And then all of a sudden, you can see the school pictures too. Those are like always the real kicker. I don't know how you are. I'm 40, but I'm thinking about like, grade school in the 90s, and now you look at school pick and yeah, we're larger now. But yeah, anyway, back in the 80s, 70s, 80s, you start seeing this increase.
So same genetic profile,
Hmm.
Different environment. It's got to
Yeah.
be the environment if that's the case. Yes.
Yeah, that's so right. People will be like, it doesn't have anything to do with their genetics. Although back then you still saw the same variance. So people that
Mhm.
were genetically predisposed to being larger, they'll be on that larger side, but within, but but
Mhm.
but less within, like smaller though. Even though once later the environment changes, the larger people back then will be the largest people now, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So the person who was 20 pounds heavier than the average person of their height back then now is maybe 60 pounds heavier than
Yeah,
the person of
right.
the average height.
Same kind of
Okay.
thing. It's a shift. Yep.
Yeah. So what I live in a romantic world in my brain. Okay. I need you to know that before we start. And the
I
romantic
can tell
world,
by your DMs. No, I'm just
well, those are a different kind of romantic. Um, the romantic world that I live in when we talk about this is that means that if somebody has the awareness, the interest, the education, and the motivation, they can opt out of the environmental factors that drive so many of us into poor health. Is that true, or am I missing something there because I'm
I
not
would
aware of something?
I would say they can I don't want to say it's 100% guaranteed. What I can say is that they can attempt to. So this is whenever I say like obesity is not a choice, like, well, then we might as well not do anything about it. It's like, no, no, no. People can attempting to do something about it. They absolutely have control to attempt it. Whether they'll be, I don't even want to say successful or failure. Let's we get away from those terms, but more of like whether they will respond to it. Hard to say. I don't. It's hard to say whether they will, but I would say within their conscious choice to do something about it, they can try at least.
Yeah.
Whether they will respond to it completely, it's hard to tell.
Well, I think the hardest part of what you're describing there is if we're thinking about somebody who's already struggling with obesity, is already overweight, that then it becomes a question of do they have the opportunity to lose it or not? We have to start in the very,
Yep.
very, very beginning, right? And so what I'm describing
You're
is,
describing before they develop their
yeah, yeah,
obesity. Is
yeah,
that right? Oh, yeah,
yes.
yeah, yeah. Okay. So, okay. Rewind a second. Yeah. So, in fact, the studies really do show this. Somebody that's predisposed to obesity, unless they have what's called a monogenic deletion, meaning one major big player gene that's and it's relatively rare, right? If they don't have one of those deletions, they have what's called polygenic, multiple genetic factors that are related to obesity. If in the beginning they are set up for success, they will minimize their their risk of developing
Mhm.
obesity. That's correct.
Right. So before we even get to the interventions for obesity, I think it's worthwhile to have a conversation about where we're going wrong, causing the need for the interventions for the
Yeah.
obesity.
Yeah.
Because where my fears are is that we end up in a proverbial arms race between what used to be food that is now owned by the companies that used to make most of their money off of cigarettes, who
Right.
now make most of their money off of food like substances, are going to feel the effect of these drugs, telling their best customers, you don't need as much of that. You don't even want as much of that. Why were you eating it in the first place while they're on the drug? They're not going to take that
Did you
laying
see the
down.
South Park episode
Yeah, I did. I did.
with the cereal companies? And
Yes.
they're all that the way that they portrayed that was just so funny. Captain Crunch and all the
Mm-hmm.
different players trying to
The high speed gunfight.
yeah, that because that's kind of what you're describing. This is where people get into like I'd say it's like a false dichotomy. People when I talk about these drugs, they're like, "So you don't care about the environment?" I'm like, I absolutely do. If I could Thanos click my
Mm-hmm.
fingers and make it the way that it used to be, and in certain ways, I like my iPhone and other technologies, but
Right.
if I could modify the environment to prevent it in the first place, it's absolutely would. It's just so hard to, I feel like there has to be legislation, something, but then that gets into big government and people aren't so much for that.
Well,
But yeah, go ahead, keep talking. It's an interesting concept.
well, I don't think it does take that. I think that makes it easier. But I
Yeah,
don't think it does take that because I don't think people even trust the government or their big, like
right.
someone came at me with like, oh, the FDA approved it for this. I'm like, the FDA also approves the cereal. So let's not hold them as like the highest arbiter of virtue. We have to trust our systems in some way, shape, or form, or we have nothing. We're
Right.
anarchy without them.
Yeah.
So I get that. But I imagine, like, I've listened to enough of your content, I've watched enough of your content, I've read enough of your content. I love the way you talk about how things go in your house. It's very similar in my house. I'm not telling my kids they can't eat a cupcake or a piece of a cookie or a slice of pizza or a hot dog. I'm not making it abundantly available for them.
Right.
Right? We have what we call the yes drawer. So we have the snacks for the kids in the house where and a fridge for the kids in the house where my wife and I don't have to even worry about the kids taking something out of it. It's mostly food in there.
Yeah.
Right? Like, so we have that peace of mind. And I understand that there's a privilege to that because we have enough money to do that
Right.
kind of. So I get the whole thing of it.
Yeah.
But the way that you described it, your kids, and I hope my kids, are growing up in an environment where it's less likely that they run into the problems that society typically has.
Yeah.
And so I do believe that people like you, your colleagues, me, have an opportunity and a responsibility to provide as much education to the market as we possibly can about what is within their control before they need these drugs.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah. So, this is, yeah. I mean, we've kind of chatted back and forth on this, and I don't know if you've seen my posts about like how our healthcare system is just like, it's terrible. I went through med school, and then after med school, you choose which specialty you want to do. I ended up doing family medicine, which is the broadest of all like
mm-hmm.
specialties, and then eventually specialized further into obesity and lipidology. But um, I became very cynical very quickly because during residency, I was such a lifestyle zealot that even my, what do you call them, attendings, the people that teach you, the people that are already board certified, and they're sitting there teaching you how to practice medicine. They even called me like a lifestyle. They thought I was a lifestyle zealot. My first quarter evaluation, they're like, "You're kind of like a lifestyle zealot," and I got mad. I said, "No, it's just that you guys are underzealous about lifestyle." And the thing is, though, it was very frustrating. I had 15 minutes with patients,
Mm-hmm.
and I eventually made these little business cards that had everything that I wanted them to know about nutrition and eating on this, like, it's a foldable little business card, and I had to give it out to every patient. This the standard stuff: fruits, vegetables, high volume, nutrient dense, calorie, uh, not so calorie dense foods, and exercise, what, all these different little things, because I was so frustrated. And eventually what it turned into is that I can't stand the healthcare system, because even if doctors wanted to give, even if they had the best knowledge in the world, if they only have 15 minutes with a patient and they have to address all the other little things, oh, looks like you're, you know we have these checklists of like, oh, your depression score is a little bit high. What's going on there? You have to know everything a little bit about them, but you have to do it within 15 minutes. How do you get to know somebody and treat the whole person within that time? And then, you go back to like, do they even have the nutrition knowledge? We don't learn it that much in medical school. Should they be the ones delivering it? They should at least know enough about it to then get them to the right places. Like, let's say a very well-trained dietitian, but then the dietitian, the insurance doesn't even pay for the dietitians anyway. So then you're back to like 5 to 10 minutes, because the medical assistant took 5 minutes getting their blood pressure and all their vitals in, to even talk to the patient, talk to them about their medicines that they're currently on, their family, social history, all these little things. So in an ideal world, absolutely, we should give them all the resources. It's just that now, dealing with the current system that healthcare professionals in, it's just so difficult. And which is eventually why I got out of the system. I don't take insurance. I don't do any of that, which I'm not I wouldn't call myself a concierge doctor. I'd call myself a direct pay. Just forget the middleman, pay
Mm-hmm.
direct. We're not going to even go through insurance. I'm going to spend more time with you, type of thing. So, but what you're saying is, yeah, sorry for the tangent, but it's in an ideal world, we would give the best tools and education and strategizing possible to not only treat someone's obesity, but prevent it in the first place at a young age. And that would
Mhm.
go from not only the kids, but the parents and a whole family type of multidisciplinary plan. Anyway, long tangent, but
Have you ever seen the famous George Carlin clip where he says there doesn't need to be a formal conspiracy theory if all of the parties involved have similar goals?
no, I don't think I've seen. I love George Carlin though.
So he I don't remember what it was exactly about, but I want to put a tinfoil hat on for a second, and I'm saying this with the clear awareness that what I'm gonna say is probably further than the truth actually is. Okay. Um, Pharmaceutical companies, or excuse me, um, health insurance companies dictate what doctors get paid to do.
Yep,
Health insurance companies therefore dictate what patients can get access to.
that's right.
I believe most people think health insurance companies want to keep their healthcare spend as low as possible because then they spend less money and they make more money as a byproduct. But the reality is, health insurance companies have a baked in guaranteed 20% profit margin on everything that they do. There's actually a law on the books. It's an 80/20 law, went into effect under Obama, that they have to dedicate 80% of their spend on direct medical costs. The other 20% can go towards marketing, administrative costs, and other. And so if they spend $1 million on your healthcare, just add 20% of that for profit, they get to put that into their books.
Yeah,
So there's the idea. On one hand, it's they don't pay for the dietitian because it doesn't work, right? That's why they won't pay for it. And so dietitians can lobby all they want, but it's not going to get paid for. The other side is maybe they don't pay for it because it's just not expensive enough. And that's it's a world I live in that I battle on a regular basis because I know that it's probably not as crazy or nefarious as I'm thinking, and it's probably not as innocent as the first explanation.
yeah. Like you said, they are lobbying a lot for this, and I don't. It's so frustrating because we shouldn't expect the physicians and other clinicians to go through dietitian nutrition school, but they should have at least a good
Mhm.
foundation knowledge and believe in it enough to be able to refer. And then if you can't even refer, then we're just kind of spinning our wheels.
Right. So the next question for you then about this is how much of what those doctors in school who are teaching you do you believe is a byproduct of how medical schools get their funding and how doctors end up getting paid? In a sense that you're not going to make as much money as a traditional medical doctor if you are a lifestyle management, right? Because one of the things people also don't respect doctors for is people often come in and they just want the drug.
Yeah,
And so
that's right.
if you're a doctor who's trying to manage lifestyle, you're fighting up against the current. And it's very difficult. And medical schools are a business and they can't make money unless people come through them. And their promise is you're going to make a great living doing work that you're going to love. And so my
So, well,
uh,
there are some not they're allegedly nonprofit, these medical
nonprofits
schools.
make a ton of money.
I know. This It's funny on Twitter. I go off about it because like most hospital systems are not
Yeah.
for profit, and it's like, yeah, but they're not in the red. They're
No.
making tons of money. These C-suite executives, oftentimes, who are just throwing pizza parties for the doctors who are getting slammed on the front, are
Mm-hmm.
making millions of dollars,
Yeah.
and
It just means that,
it's almost like an evil, like maniacal laughing in the background,
yeah,
just with big
we
monopoly money bags of.
we can't have any profits, so we're going to boost your salary. Sorry. Like that's
I I don't I don't know if anything nefarious is going on with. I think it's the system.
well, I
The
don't think it's
system
nefarious
is
either. I think it's incentive laden.
there. There's all sorts of people. People are like, oh, the med schools are paid for by big pharma. All these things. I I, I think they're trying to do their best to teach their students how to just go within the system that's currently out there. That's the way that I see it,
Right.
especially going through it and then looking back. So it's like when you talk about lifestyle, so we don't get paid for life. Like if I did the right correct lifestyle within the fee for what we call fee for service, which is, you see somebody, a doctor for, whatever a cold or going in for your type 2 diabetes, we get to code at a level 3 or 4 or whatever, and then we get paid based on that. And if you do the correct lifestyle, you have to spend more and more. You have to spend a lot of time with a patient, and
Yes.
really, and it's if that means you're only going to see like 10 patients a day doing it, you'll put that practice out of business, as opposed to
Yes.
other doctors who just they get in, okay, here's your knee injection, no physical therapy, boom, done. They get paid more for the procedure. Next person, boom, done procedure. Here's a quick thing. They see like 30, 40 patients a day, no, barely any lifestyle. That doctor's making a lot of money. So the
Yes.
incentives are not just not aligned.
Well,
Yeah. So go ahead. Go ahead.
no, but this is where this is where there's nuance to the conversation.
Yeah.
When people say, for example, people who don't understand how prescriptions work, like, yes, there were incentives for getting people vaccinated and whatever. Like that was a thing, but we're not even, that's not what we're talking about. Doctors don't make more money when they prescribe Ozempic to a patient.
That's right. People think we do, but I don't. We don't. We
Right.
don't.
Not from the pharmaceutical company and not from the insurance company. Where that's not true though, is you can see more patients if that's how you practice.
Yeah. I mean, if you so, and you see this really with the med spa places,
Yeah, don't
which
get me started on the street with the
with the
bifold. Come
semaglutide,
Ozempic, come
and
get
they're
your Ozempic
and they're
here.
well, and they're straight up selling the compounded stuff, which that's a whole nother story. But they're basically charging, they're buying the compounded stuff and then upcharging it and selling it directly to the patient. They don't even care if they qualify or not for the
Right.
medicine. They're just like, here's $1,000 for an injection, or
Yep.
come in $1,000 a month, you're going to get your injection no matter whether you qualify for it.
Mm-hmm.
So, but yeah, the incentives are not aligned. So if imagine a busy family practice doctor who is just like just trying to stay afloat, and a patient comes in, and if they don't do a long history and realize that, hey, maybe this person actually would, they've never actually tried some sort of lifestyle uh, program that they might respond to. And I'll go into this. So let's say they don't have any of the genetic, like they didn't have overweight or obesity when they were younger. It's not running in the family. The pandemic of something. It's usually the pandemic or kids. Something disrupted their lifestyle and they gained like 30 pounds, and now they technically meet the criteria for obesity. Those people, I think, are just, they're the best shot at having lifestyle work for them. To just, all they have to do is get back into the old habits, and something disrupted them. So imagine if a busy family doctor getting that patient, and they don't have time. They don't have time to even talk about it. So it's like they got to get to, they're looking at their watch, like, hey, have you tried this new medicine? I could see that. They're trying to make ends meet. The system's not built for even doing a long, proper history and evaluation.
Mm-hmm.
So what you're saying, that the system would push them in that direction. That's correct.
And there's a misconception that doctors are just rolling in cash. A lot of doctors who
Yeah,
own their own private practice have no idea how to run a business within their
that's right.
practice. And so they're
Yeah,
working really hard, but not making any money.
that's true.
um, okay. So one last thing on the environment, and then we can get into the drugs a bit. The one of the things I'm most frustrated about and trying to solve for locally is my kids go to school. I have a 9-year-old, a 7-year-old, a 5-year-old, and a 9-week-old at the time of
Oh,
this recording. Yeah.
jeez.
Yeah. We finally hit the angle for a boy. So I got my 3 girls and then a boy. And genetics, it's fascinating for anybody who doesn't have kids. I have 4 very different kids, different body shapes, different sizes, different intellect, like different people. Same 2 parents, I think, unless my wife
You
got one
never
body.
know.
Yeah, you never know for sure. We can get it tested. Um, there's a cool factor to getting lunch at school. There's a nerd factor to coming to school with lunch.
Yeah.
And the lunches that they get at school are garbage. They're garbage. I even looked at a sign today in the school from the people who sell the food to the school talking about the food they sell them. And it was all the benefits of a potato, which, by the way, I'm all for potatoes. Let's not
Right, right.
villainize potatoes. But one of the benefits was high in protein. I'm like, I don't think that's true. Right. So I'm like, well, if this is the sign that they're hanging in the school, What are they telling my kids about food? And what are they serving my kids? And I look at the menu, right? It's, do you want the cheese sticks today? Do you want the chicken, quote, fingers? Do you want French toast? It's not food. And that seems to me like a simple decision that the school could make. We're in a well-funded district. So I met with the school superintendent and with the assistant superintendent, 1-on-2, me and them. I said, how can I help you with this? I don't know what problems you face in trying to solve for it. So I'm not here to tell you you're doing a bad job. I want to understand the problems that you're facing so that I can put some of my resources towards a solution with you. And the biggest problem that they said that they faced was if we gave kids healthy food, they wouldn't eat it. Because when they go home, their parents aren't serving them healthy food. And so now we would just waste a bunch of money on food that would rot in the school. And that was a problem I don't know how to solve because my thought process was let them get hungry. Let them be hungry then.
Yeah.
Do you have any thoughts about affecting local, and resources, thoughts, local school districts? Like it's a crazy thing because my kids, it's cool to get the school lunch.
It's a cultural, there's a big cultural thing here, because if you look at other countries' school lunches, and there you can see some of the pictures. I've had followers from Korea and all sorts of places send me pictures of their school lunches, and I'm like, damn, I want that school lunch. That looks like some good, like, healthy food. There is something to it that, like, you make it healthier, and they might not eat it, but I think some people think healthy when they think about healthy. What are the foods that you think of when the school's thinking like healthy foods that the kids won't eat? My kids eat like pork chops and steak and like
Same.
and decent vegetables, like not a ton of vegetables. They're the same as anybody, but like they'll eat whole fruit and lean good meat um when you serve it to them, and then they'll eat decent starchy, it doesn't have to be
Gourmet.
some, yeah, it doesn't have to be gourmet health. I think that's what they're thinking, right? It has to look,
Well, I
I don't
started
know.
with them. The way I tried to help them was through a back door. And I was like, can we agree that there are some ingredients we don't want to put into our kids' bodies? Yes. Can we agree that these are some of those ingredients? Yes. Can we set a timeline on which we will eliminate these ingredients from the school altogether? Maybe. Right? Because what happens with that is you end up not being able to put shelf stable foods
Yeah.
into the meals when these things are cut out of the food. But anyway, I share that with you because it speaks to the environmental problem that we're all facing uphill. Like outside of pulling my kids from school, which by the way, I love my wife. I want her to stay happy and healthy. And if my kids were home all day, she wouldn't be happy and healthy. Right.
Who would be?
Right. Well, like I love my kids
I
enough
know.
to spend really good evenings and weekends
Yeah,
with them and
I
mornings.
know. I
That's
know.
just my reality. Uh,
It's
but
true.
so if we're talking about the kids and we use that as a premise, one of the concerns that I have about stuff like Ozempic, Wegovy, and all the ones that are coming down the line, besides the arms race between them and the food companies,
Yeah.
is any responsible doctor who's prescribing this stuff is saying it comes with the responsibility of diet and exercise.
Yeah.
Right. But we also know that not all of the patients, in fact, probably most of the patients are not taking that advice, which means the kids growing up in the house are still eating the same way that they would have been eating prior to their parents going on these drugs. We've seen a 4x obesity growth in our children in the last 40 years, from less than 4% to almost 20%. It's like 18 and a half now. And they're not the kind of obese that bodybuilders are. Right? We can get into that later on if we want to. They're dealing with the obesity of excess fat on their body composition as a result of what they're eating and what they're not doing. We went from having phys ed every day under JFK to having phys ed like once a week in our schools. We went from eating real food to eating this fake stuff. And now the parents who are stressed already, they're trying to make ends meet financially. Their jobs are not keeping up with the cost of living. They're trying to buy convenient, quick, easy stuff to give their kids so that they can numb out and watch Netflix and not have to parent And I get it. I get it. I'm not judging that. My fear is when the parents go on this intervention, the solution ultimately becomes so do the kids. And now we're starting to talk about giving it to 12-year-olds. It's approved for 12-year-olds.
Yeah, that's right. Wegovy, yeah.
Yep.
The same ingredient as Ozempic, but Ozempic's not approved. It's Wegovy. It's the same drug, basically,
Sure.
though.
So when does it become 6-year-olds? And that this is a fear that I have where ultimately we inherit generationally the expectation that this drug is my way of not being morbidly obese.
Yeah, it's an interesting thought process. I did this interview for the future of medicine, and they wanted to, or future of things. They wanted to know what they had some thought provoking questions like, could these drugs eventually be used for straight up like, would everybody just be on these even just to prevent obesity in the first place?
Mm-hmm.
And the answer is that it's not out of the realm. I'm not saying that's a good thing, but it's not out of the realm. So the question that, I mean, I know some of these people talk about, like, do we give the fish, in a dirty fish bowl or
Yeah, you're talking
aquarium?
about Cali means with that one.
Yeah, we don't get along. I don't get along with this person, but it's a good analogy. It's not a bad analogy.
Can I share it so people know what you're talking about?
Sure, go ahead.
If we put a fish in a fish tank and the water in the fish tank is dirty, we don't medicate the fish, we change the water.
Yeah.
And so that's speaking to environment and
yeah. And I would say it's a false dichotomy. There's going to be disease. We should be cleaning the fish bowl, the water. We should absolutely be doing that. But then there's going to be some diseased people that still needs the medicine. So in an ideal world, like, here's what I see with my patients. But this is, again, I have a selection bias. I am I love these drugs, but I'm also a lifestyle zealot. So the people that come to me seem to have that same mindset. I've heard anecdotes of other doctors saying, yeah, I feel like my patients are just eating less, they're just eating fewer donuts now. Whereas my patients tell me that I know what to do. I know that broccoli and apples are better than potato chips and french fries and whatever. It's hard to do it. Then when they start the drug, they're like, I can finally go eat those things I know I should be eating because that drive to eat the other stuff is gone. Having said that, there are some studies coming that are going to be published probably in the next year or so, looking at what happens if you don't advise people what to do. Do they just eat fewer calories of the stuff that's probably shouldn't be eaten so much? The stuff that we call treats and whatever. Good question. And yeah, are the parents who are taking these medicines, are they changing their eating habits and then helping their family? There's a ripple effect. If anybody
mm-hmm.
wants to know, it basically, when one spouse starts doing something, the other one automatically starts doing that. It's a little bit. It's not 100%, but you tend to see that. And then, are they going to help their kids do the same type of thing? I think it should be studied. I don't know. I actually don't know the answer. It's actually, you know what? That's actually a really good academic question I'm thinking about now. Like, do parents who start these medicines, who have had less than ideal food choices for them and their whole family, change their food choices for them and their whole family? Or do they just eat fewer of those? Or do they make their own food while the rest of the family? I don't know. I actually don't know. It's a good question. I don't know.
So I appreciate your answer to that question. I have a gift and a curse in my everyday life. I live in the future, and I have a really hard time enjoying the present and reflecting on the past because I'm always thinking about the future.
I am the same way. It's go ahead. I'm interested in, maybe you've thought about it more.
I think there's some benefit to it, and I think that there's some negative to it.
Yeah.
Part of the benefit is I think that it allows for us to ask questions about what is possible or likely to happen as we move forward that other people aren't considering. Right. And so the post that I made that really prompted us having this conversation was I said that I believe Ozempic could be the next opioid crisis. And people took it as me saying Ozempic works like opioids and people are going to overdose and die on it, which is not what I was saying at all. But like we said earlier, it was in the caption, not in the post. And all I was saying is if we go back in time, we look at like starting with Vioxx, and I'm sure there's something before that, but I'm not a medical historian.
Vioxx is one of the big ones that changed the course of how we should be
Yes.
studying
Well,
and viewing
well,
these things.
should being the operative word, because
Yeah.
we had that, and then we had the way that we just did the entire vaccine rollout. And I'm not saying people are dying from the vaccine. I'm not the guy who does that's not me. I don't have an opinion. I'm not an academic. But now we're looking at Ozempic, and we had the opioid crisis, right? And now we have Ozempic. And what I think is similar about all of these things was the rhetoric about them was they work, the side effects are low, they're not addictive, they're not permanent use stuff, and they have all these other benefits we didn't even think were going to happen. There's nothing wrong with taking it. Look at all the benefit that it does. We saw what happened with Vioxx. We saw what happened with the opioid crisis. There's a lot of debate about what happened with the vaccines, but certainly it seems that not everybody who took it needed to take it, me being one of those people. And my concern is stuff like Ozempic, Wegovy. We don't have long-term studies on non-diabetics. We are prescribing it to people knowing that it is a long-term use intervention. And we can come back to how maybe it won't be, because I want to have that conversation too. And I believe societally we're downplaying the potential side effects and magnifying the benefit. And then it's like this slip in of when paired with diet and exercise. Yeah, but most people aren't pairing it with diet and exercise. And so that leads me to wanting to ask you this. Who is the person for whom it's not only ideal, but it could be considered essential? Because I think people are hearing what I'm saying and thinking I'm saying this drug should go away, which is not true. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying there is somebody for whom it's perfect. And then there is somebody for whom it could work. And then we start getting further and further away from the bullseye and we get into irresponsible zone. And I want to lay out what that looks like.
Yeah. Yeah. Just to back up. So real quick, the GLP-1 glucagon like peptide 1, natural hormone, released by our intestines, discovered in the 80s. It has this what's called incretin effect, basically in the 50s or 60s. I can never remember. They injected glucose in the veins versus had people drink glucose. And they found, and they wanted to see the insulin response. And they found that those who actually drank the glucose had a bigger insulin response than those who injected it. It's just like, what? So they called it the incretin effect, intestinal secretion of insulin. There was like something about eating, ingesting that through the GI tract that had some effect on insulin more than just injecting straight glucose into the veins. So
Can
I
I
call
stop
it
you?
the
Can
yeah.
I ask
Go
you a
ahead.
question? How do they know that wasn't as a result of something that happened in the mouth?
Yeah, I mean it's something. I mean it's all all.
So they're just considering it the external system, like because it
Just
doesn't connect with
the
those.
GI, yeah, GI tract, but they assumed it was the intestines for whatever reason. There might be, there are some things that occur right when in the mouth. So I know you like that too, but I'm making just a bad
Oh,
dirty
I
joke.
get. Listen, I like the dirty jokes.
Yeah,
So
yeah. So
for people who don't know, when we were organizing this podcast, I wanted to make sure that Doc was comfortable talking to me. So I said, should we have some foreplay first on like a quick call, or do you want to get right to the good stuff? And so he knows I'm down
we
for the
started
agreement.
going back and forth with our innuendos. Anyway, so incretin effect. So that was the 50s, 60s. They discovered a few of these incretins. One of them is called GIP, which is another one of these things. But GLP-1 was discovered in the 80s. And then there was a race in the early 2000s to be like, we got to develop some new diabetes drugs. And there's a whole cool, really history behind it on YouTube if anybody wants to go look. Researchers found that the Gila monster, this Gila lizard, this saliva venom basically had very similar structure to our own human GLP-1. And so they developed it into the first drug. This was 2006, 5 and 6 is when this first drug, exenatide Byetta, was approved. So we've had these drugs out for we're closing in on 20 years, almost 2 decades. Now, the reason I say this because people are like, oh, there's not a lot of long-term studies. Now, Ozempic was approved in 2017, 16, 17. So that one's been out for now 7 or so years. So they've changed over time. The reason that people made these analogs and not just, why don't we just make human GLP-1? Our own GLP-1's broken down within minutes. It's very quick. We would have to have like infusions of it. And even still, it wouldn't be so effective. So they developed ways where our bodies can't break down this exogenous or I don't want to call it artificial, but analogs of our own GLP-1. So over the years, Byetta exenatide was twice a day, then they got into once a day, then it was like once a week. And now they're hitting areas of our brain depending on the size of the peptide and the way that peptide hits the receptors that have all sorts of downshoot effects. And just to back up a little bit more, talking about like long-term studies. So semaglutide, the SELECT trial was just released in November. About 4 years of good data in those without type 2 diabetes, but with cardiovascular disease. And they showed decreases in heart attacks. So we're starting to get more long-term studies. Do we have people on these? Have we had people on the one specific drug? Not, it's been out for 20 years, like the types of drugs, but like one specific one for 10, 20 years? Not yet. But this gets into your question of like, who should be getting this and who shouldn't be? These drugs are probably the most beneficial for those who have the highest risk and complications from their obesity. Because drugs, they have the effects, the intended effects that we want, but they also have side effects. They have just effects. And if you don't have a high risk, meaning a high upside of benefit from it, then you can have more downside, if that makes sense. So if your upside is like, I don't know, I'm pretty metabolically healthy, I have like 10 pounds of vanity weight to lose. However, there are some potential risks from these drugs that are starting to come out, and they're rare, but like if you're just taking it for vanity non-health reasons, your downside is much more of a possibility. So I would say the most bang for the buck are those with true like obesity. And again, this gets into the BMI and body composition and whether you actually have complications from the obesity, like your fat adipose tissue. So those who actually, like my BMI in college was like it was like 30, 31. So technically I would have obesity based off of BMI, but I had blurry abs. I was a heavyweight wrestler. I probably had some sleep apnea, so probably I could have actually qualified for the medicine, but I didn't have that disease of obesity that we talk about, the fat tissue causing organ damage and all sorts of sequela from it. So those people that have the high BMI, high amounts of fat with some sort of adipose or obesity related issue, absolutely most bang for the buck. The people that just want to lose a little bit of weight and are just straight up already healthy, maybe it's fine. We need to study them. We haven't studied this population, and maybe it's fine over time. Maybe it would be fine to use in small amounts to prevent obesity or whatever. We just don't know. But I would say like the big push by Hollywood actors and actresses to everybody's taking a little bit of this stuff. It's like, I don't know what, I mean, you could imagine what, we don't know because it's not been studied in a randomized controlled fashion. It's just, we'd have to look back at observational data, be like, what's going on with these people? So that's kind of a long-winded answer. I just wanted to go back to like how long these have been studied and then give some physiology, and then also like who are the right candidates for these medicines.
Well, for me, the curtain has been pulled back on Hollywood over the last 5 years, where it's like those are not actually the people who we should be trying to model our lives after. We've seen that now over and over.
Probably right. That's probably right.
Yeah. But like I get people all the time who give me crap about this. Like diabetics have been taking it for 18 years. I'm like, yeah, diabetics have also been taking insulin for 18 years. Would you like to take insulin? Well, no. Why not? Well, because I don't have diabetes. Right. That's the whole point. So what I'm getting at is the long-term research of these drugs, all of the variants, doesn't exist, from my understanding, on people who don't have type 2 diabetes. You're describing it now being a 4-year study on people who have cardiovascular disease but not diabetes.
That's right.
And so even if we could find common ground here and say, okay, great. So if you have, not great, but you have cardiovascular disease, you have type 2 diabetes, you also have the comorbidity of obesity, and it's not just a BMI, it's a BMI plus a waist circumference plus some blood markers and all of this. There's a good argument that this drug is a good intervention for you.
That's right.
I can get behind that argument. I can get behind the other side too, which is, well, those people can also solve that problem through significant lifestyle change, with the understanding that that is significantly harder, less likely to happen, and is a forever thing also. And so we have to look at what's the risk associated with them not being able to do that. And where does our empathy live? Does our empathy live with help this person continue to live so that they can be with their family, their friends, and help the world the way that they are? Or is it that person deserves what they have coming? I don't fall on the they deserve what they have coming side.
Yeah.
But I can see both arguments, right?
Yeah.
So now we get out of that. Now we get out of that zone. Those people are now off of the table. There's a bit of a gray area that I think is reasonable for people to say, well, look, if you have a 34 BMI or higher, and it's not because you're jacked, even if you don't have cardiovascular disease or diabetes, there are other comorbidities to obesity, like the way that you would respond to the flu or to COVID, the likely downside effects of your joint health. Like, all of these things are certainly possible. And so I can even see an argument being made that those people should be able to go on it also.
Yeah, that's right.
Then it starts to become, oh, I don't know that I agree that that person should be on it. But you and I both know, and I listened to you on a podcast, and there was a point that I feel like you wanted to say more, but your friend wasn't asking it of you.
Which one
And
was that?
his name was Mike Matthews or Matt Michael, something like
Okay,
that.
yeah.
And he said he had a friend who had 10 pounds of vanity weight to lose. And he just went on the drug to get shredded. He's like, I'm not even hungry anymore. And you said, I think very responsibly, I wouldn't have prescribed that drug to him.
Yeah, right.
And so my question now becomes, if we agree that's happening, and it's happening on a continuum, right? Like, even the person with 50 pounds to lose who gained it during COVID or whatever is being given this drug. And so is the teenage girl who just walks into the doctor's office and says, I have poor body image and I need to lose 20 pounds. They're like, all right, well, here you go. Here's a lifelong intervention that you can be on now, Miss 16-year-old. That whole range to me is irresponsible.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, so there's a few things going on right now. Insurance is for the latter is the young patient who has body dysmorphia and issues that just wants to lose some vanity weight. Insurance, like, they're cracking down. They shouldn't be paying for it. Having said that, there are a lot of rich families out there that they have money and they'll gladly shell out $1,000 a month for these types of things. And there are doctors that will absolutely prescribe them. And I don't even know what the doctors are thinking. I don't know if it's because they're a lot of times they're more like concierge doctors.
But what you're describing, but what you're saying right now, I want to be clear for people.
Yeah.
They still can't go to CVS and buy it for $1,000. They still need a doctor to write.
They need a doctor prescribe it. That's right.
Right. So there's an ethical issue here.
I agree. Yeah.
So I believe that that's where a lot of our focus could and should be. And that's where government could play a role. It's like, hey, hold on a second. That's malpractice. And it's more dangerous than just the damage to that patient, because what happens is people will trust you less. They will trust the Dr. Nadolskys of the world less because you carry the same title as this other person who is practicing unethically.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Right. Yeah. The thing I get most often on social media is, hey, you should change your profile from Dr. Sean Pastuch to Dr. Sean Chiropractor so people know that you weren't a real doctor. I'm like, yeah, you should probably fuck off. You're not going to like anything I have to say. Because at the end of the day, if we're just leaving all of the questions of authority to authority, we're never going to have effective conversation.
Yeah,
Right?
no, yeah, it's what do they call someone who gets a C minus in medical school? They call him a doctor.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. They
And
might
although
actually.
I know some very smart but slightly unethical doctors. So like, they probably there's a lot of people that did very well in their board scores and they end up being charlatans. I can't even explain it. I don't even know
Mhm.
what goes through their minds, but yeah, it happens.
Well, listen, I was the C student who didn't care about the grade. I was like, look,
Yeah,
I'm gonna when I graduate, they're gonna
right.
call me doctor, and
Yeah.
I don't really care what I got on my micro test because I'm not treating people who I need to understand microbiology. Like when I took the boards, to give you an anecdote, um, the way chiropractic school boards work is that there's a minimum score that you have to get, and then there's a curve. And I was just like, I'm only going to study 70% of the stuff. I'm not even going
Yeah.
to study 100%. I'm just going to know 100%, 70% of the content. And so if I don't know a question on the test, I'm not going to be stressed by it. I probably just didn't study that. And I passed all of my boards first time through.
Minimal effective dose. That's what.
That's it. That's it. Um, but so the point I'm making there is there are there are doctors who want to be in this world to help people and make money. It's totally legit. If you're helping people, you should get rewarded for it because there
Yeah.
has to be incentive.
Yeah, I have no problem with that.
There's also docs who are being irresponsible about the way that they're doing this, either for the sake of money, for fame, for convenience, because they're ignorant, whatever. There's a million different reasons. I'm not going to jump into their heads about why they're doing it. What do we do about that? Because that to me
Yeah.
that's where the opioid comparison comes in. I know people who have hurt themselves as a result of their alcoholism. Like, hear me out on this. It's going to go right into it. As a result of their alcoholism in 2024, they got hurt during an episode while they were drunk. They go to the doctor. They end up needing surgery. After the surgery, the doctor knows how they hurt themselves, why they hurt themselves, and they prescribe opioids on the way out. What do you
Yeah,
think that person's problems are now?
that's tough. So a lot of state licensure boards, and I don't even know if this change. Honestly, this is actually another academic question because I don't really know the answer to it. You have to go through special CME courses on when to appropriately prescribe opioids. Um, and
Sure, but like that's
but
like anger
whether
management.
Yeah, right. So whether they actually follow, like, so I guess my question is, does that actually change prescribing practices? That's the academic question. I don't know the answer. It might. I'm not sure if it does or not. Yeah, there's a lot of inappropriate prescribing. Now, I will say, like you said, these drugs may actually decrease alcohol and other addictive like behaviors.
Couldn't have been the best thing
Um,
ever.
but but point taken. I I the thing that bothers me most too is that I always say it's not for vanity weight loss, and I mean that in the case of like not someone who has obesity and their main motivation is vanity. Like that's fine because I know it's gonna
Mm-hmm.
be healthy for you too to lose some weight. I'm talking about someone who is clinically just stark healthy, metabolically healthy, who has clinically insignificant amounts of fat to lose. Losing that fat may actually be harmful in some sort of ways because sometimes having a little bit of
Mm-hmm.
adipose on our body is actually healthful. And we do worry about, well, if they lose, when you're leaner, you lose more muscle mass as you lose weight. It's normal physiology. When you have more adipose to lose, you lose more adipose. When you're leaner, you lose more of the mix of the lean. So there's a potential for harm as well there. I don't know how to fix it. Like the thing is that it bothers me, I guess I was going to get into, is that I do know of doctors doing it for vanity purposes. And, if they're doing the compounded stuff and they're selling it to the patient knows the harms, I guess go right ahead, whatever. But like the other thing that bothers me is that the supply chain is not good. The demand is high. We have a ton
Mhm.
of people who can actually have benefit, and now we can't even get like it. We're calling pharmacies left and right. They can't even get the drug because it's in such short supply. So any vanity prescribing is worsening that effect for those who actually need it. I'm not sure what to do about it. I mean, I would assume that like there was a thing where pharmacists would start getting involved. Like, do you have to have a diagnosis code on it? But then I've seen some doctors straight up just lie and be like, yeah, this patient has type
Yeah,
2
of course.
diabetes.
No,
Go ahead.
the solution is you lose your license.
Yeah,
The solution is you
you
get fined an unreasonable amount of money, you lose your license, and
yeah,
potentially you go to jail. Like
you get a
I don't mind going that far because I think it's a scorn on society. Like
yeah,
we need you said earlier the healthcare system's a mess, and I agree with you.
yeah,
But
it is.
I don't think that's a cause. I think that's an effect. I think that's the result. We've never the healthcare system was never set up to be so overwhelmed by illness.
Yeah.
Like if I'm having a heart attack, can I have a doctor, please? There's no, there's no question that that's what I want. If I need a surgery, I would like it to be with a surgeon,
Right.
right? I have a sebaceous cyst in my back. My friends and I thought about taking it out with a steak knife when I was in college.
That
That would have been a terrible idea,
would have been
right?
bad.
Yeah, we were drinking a little bit. But
Just a little bit.
the point I'm making about that is like we have to be able to throw out the water without the baby. You
Yeah.
know, and we have to know like there is a if you are going to die, you want a doctor. The healthcare system is still great at keeping people who would otherwise die alive. But the healthcare system was never set up to help people not be on the path to dying because of lifestyle decisions that are not as I know it sounds too basic when I say it that way. At the end of the day, when we peel back all of the reasons that they're making those decisions, we still end up with decisions. So we can agree it's difficult to make better ones. It's difficult to even find better options in a lot of cases. And it's decisions. Those are both true. So now, for me, every time that a doctor does something unethical and makes it less easy to trust the medical system, we damage the likelihood that somebody would survive who otherwise would have. Steve Jobs is a great example. Tina Turner is another recent example. I don't know if you saw what she said.
No, I didn't see what happened with Tina.
I think it was a type of cancer. It could have been something else, but whatever it was, she delayed seeing doctors because she didn't trust the medical system.
Yeah, yeah.
And she wrote a letter to her fans saying, I made a mistake and I'm dying for it. Don't
That's
make
sad.
this mistake. So this is where this goes when doctors do the stuff that we're talking about right now. And
Yeah.
this is what I was talking about when I made that post, and nobody wants to see that. That's the conversation I wanted to be having with you here. Now, if we take that one step further, we don't know long term what this does. It could end up being the best thing that ever happened. I don't have evidence that it's going to start killing people, that they're going to be stumped over in the street using the version that gets
Right.
dumped in the bathtub, right?
Yes.
But we are seeing that incremental move, right? Where you just talked about the supply chain.
Yeah.
So it's not there today, but what do? Wait until people are making it in the bathtub until we say, hey,
And they
pump
are.
the brakes.
And people are. They are straight up making it in bathtubs.
That's
They
what I'm
are.
saying, man.
They are.
So the parallels are really not that crazy, where you can see a world in which people do start overdosing or getting a bad dose and dying as a result of not actually getting what it was intended to be. You can see
Yeah,
that happening.
that's yeah. There are reports of some of those types of things going
Yes.
on.
So now, finally, I so appreciate your openness to have this conversation in this way, and I knew that I had a feeling that you would, and that's why I wanted to talk to you. The last thing I want to talk about, unless there's something you think we missed, is one of the other things people come at me for is you're just another trainer afraid that your business is going to go away if this stuff works. And I'm like, actually, because of the way I set up my business in particular. Now, yeah, the people who are like, hey, lose 20 pounds in 6 weeks, they're fucked. And good.
Yes, right. Yeah, yeah,
And good, by the way.
yeah.
Because they're the equal opposite problem. But
Yeah.
we don't promise weight loss to anybody. Like you'll never see us talk about how to lose weight as a way to get them to become a client. So the way Active Life works is we're educating people so that they don't actually need to work with us long term, so that they can actually become independent. And if this stuff works the way it's intended to, and the doctors are being responsible and saying, only take this if you're exercising and learning how to eat differently, well, then they're going to say, where do I learn how to exercise? And doctors are going to find Active Life and say, that company will educate you, not just exercise you. They're not going to throw you into a big group. They're not going to tell you, I know you're a mom of 4 kids who got woken up twice last night, who also has a job where your boss is down your throat. You're stressed out. You're having a hard time making your ends meet, but you've got to find a way to get 8 hours of sleep, and you got to get here 6 days a week, or you're just not taking it seriously.
Yeah. That's like a
That
meme of mine.
I didn't make that up. I took it from you.
Yeah.
But that is a lot of the fitness industry. It's just not us.
That's right.
We're
No, it's
we're we're
good. You're
we're,
you're
we're
you're adaptive. I mean, like that's you're smart in the way you think about that, because like I don't know of any drug. There's drugs coming out that are going to try to build muscle and whatever, but I'm not. I don't think there's even.
try and build. It's called steroids. It works
Yeah,
okay.
no, there's those. There's some other. There's these myostatin inhibitors that they're coming out with. Who knows if they're. But even still, there's so many other more benefits of movement
Mhm.
beyond just straight up hypertrophy. So
Yeah.
like it's very, yeah, it's, you have a good mindset, you have a very, clearly you're smart business, but abundance mindset. These other people have a very scarcity mindset, in that like, man, if I like, and other people say the opposite to me, like, you just like these drugs because you make more money off them. Like, I could not do any weight loss. Like you said, people will come to me for
Mhm.
longevity purposes and just living a good life, and working on other things. So it's like I can make plenty of money doing whatever, but I like the way you're thinking about that. That's good, because other people are not, and like you said, it's because they're worried about their get lose weight, get rich quick schemes that are probably going to go away.
Well, and so this is where I don't know if challenge you is the right word, but I'm asking for your help.
Yeah,
And I'm asking for your help in this way. I am not welcome in a lot of rooms in the fitness industry because I speak out against that stuff. And I speak out about, like, look, uh, I'm speaking at a men's health conference later this year. I bet 90% of the room is on TRT.
yeah,
And I don't mind you being on TRT. That's not my
right.
problem. My question is, why'd you go on?
Yeah,
What did
it's a good
what what
question.
what were you missing? What did you need? Do you have it now? Do you have it now? Or if you stopped taking the TRT and you went back to the way that you were before, like are like we both, it's, to me, the risk is like what happens with the um bariatric surgery, where it's the highest case of suicidation after medical intervention is people who had bariatric surgery because potentially because they lose all of that weight and they realize they still have all of their problems.
Yeah, weight loss doesn't solve everything.
Right. So I'm not welcome in a lot of fitness rooms because I'm like, hey, this isn't it. You're talking about the wrong stuff. You don't even have a wall full of proof that it happens. You have a wall full of proof that it happened for a moment. But if we asked you, if you followed up with all of those people you have Polaroids of on your wall, most of them have their problems again. Right. So you didn't actually solve anything. You were just an expensive intervention for a moment. We need to be thinking about how to help these people think about what they're thinking about differently. You, I think, have a platform, the credibility, the authority to lead doctors in the same way, where, look, this stuff works. And we're over prescribing it. And so it's losing credibility, and so are we.
Yeah, people get mad when I post about the using it for the correct indications. They just people, I don't know. People just want to take. There are some people that feel like they get benefit for like their had rheumatoid arthritis. They have all these inflammatory things, and fine, but like straight up like vanity weight loss, I'm like, pump the brakes, my
Mhm.
friends.
Yeah.
Pump the brakes. It's irresponsible. I mean, like I said, it's possible that they view it in the future and it's just everybody's on it because it's like basically like a multivitamin, and somehow, yeah, once in a while people will get some bad stuff, but maybe it's going to prevent heart disease for all of us. I don't know. But they don't know either. Nobody really knows. What
Mhm.
we do know is that like we don't know the effects. We do know there are side effects. We do know that it works well in certain groups that we discussed already. So yeah, people get mad at me when I say that too. It's kind of like, all right, whatever. You just go take your drugs. I don't really know what you want me to say.
Mhm. Well, and I guess there's one thing I forgot to ask you that I want to do because I know that it affects people who I know. The likelihood of coming off of it and being successful.
Oh yeah, great question. Yeah.
What is it?
Yeah. So you'll have obesity doctors, and I don't agree with that. I mean, I'm an obesity doctor and specialist, whatever. You'll have you'll have some groups like the fitness world be like, this should be short term, like crutch band-aid for a jump start. You'll have obesity doctors saying, no, obesity is a lifelong chronic disease. You need to take this for life. The truth is, when you look at it, there's probably like it's around 15-20% of people actually can come off of it, as far as we know, at least for around a year, and not regain and actually keep off most of their weight. Around they look at what they do in these trials. They put everybody on the drug, and then partway through they re-randomize a portion of those people to a placebo. And what you'll see is that most of them, yes, most of them will start regaining the weight, where the rest of them that stayed on the active drug keeps losing weight. But then when they narrow it down further, I'm like, okay, did everybody regain the weight? No, it's actually like that's not a huge percentage, the minority, but there are people that can keep the weight off. Now, what they also don't know, not everybody needs to stay on this highest dose every single week. So what we see is that some patients, you'll notice when they try to wean off the drug, or they stop the drug cold turkey or wean off of it, whatever, they're like, oh, they call that food noise, the hunger, the satiety, thinking about food's back, and they start to regain their weight. They're like, I'm trying. Do you need to crank them back up to their highest dose? No, what even just a small little dose, not even every week like it's intended for and it's approved for, almost like every other week of even just a low dose keeps them at bay. So it's really interesting stuff. Then there's other non-GLP-1 drugs like metformin and bupropion and naltrexone, some of these other drugs out there that or have other intended uses, but like keep like once they lose the weight, the appetite's not as bad as when they were had the
Mhm.
weight in the first place. Um, it's really interesting stuff. So anyway, what I'd say is, from what we know right now, maybe 15 or so percent can come off the medicine at least for a year or so, and keep most of their weight off.
Okay.
There's going to be a whole nother gray middle to where they probably don't have to be on the highest dose. And then there's probably people that have that strong genetic predisposition that like they try to come off that medicine, and they're just like ravenous.
Mhm.
Um, but the other thing is, the people, and this is anecdotal again, but the people that really get into diet and exercise, like the medicine really changes how they think about food, and they kind of get obsessed with like getting jacked almost even. And it's not just men, it's women too. Um, and this is why I'm such a big fan of like strength training. They get so into the hypertrophy training and getting jacked and exercising that now they come off the drug, they're eating more. They're like, I'm hungry. They're eating more, but now the food is fueling their exercise.
Mhm.
And they're just getting, I don't know. It's really interesting stuff. Anyway, I just kind of went over the data and a lot of the anecdotal stuff that I see. And we'll see there. I'm doing some research in this area, and we'll see what other people come up with it. But I don't think not everybody has to stay on the drug, but majority will, of some low dose, at least for now, until something else is figured out in the future. But not everybody. That's the right answer.
This is the last time I'll say last question, I promise. Um, I know that there is a significant portion of the weight that's lost in the beginning of using the drug is from lean muscle mass. And I know that a similar amount of weight lost by people who are losing weight through diet and exercise is also lost through lean muscle mass. So the argument that you're losing muscle mass is not a relevant argument unless the likelihood of gaining that muscle mass back over time through diet and exercise is higher than the likelihood of gaining that muscle mass back over time through GLP-1 inhibitors is. So my question to you is it more likely somebody gains their muscle mass back through diet and exercise that was lost in the early phases of weight loss than it is for someone on the inhibitors?
Yeah, this isn't really well known. Um, I've gotten into this. Peter Attia, we joke. He was kind of the one that went on the news like over a year ago and pointed this out. What you see is in the step one trial. This is one where they looked at Wegovy as a semaglutide for obesity. Um, and then there's the Ozempic trials for semaglutide for those with type 2 diabetes. They did these subgroup analysis where they did DEXA scans. They unfortunately didn't do DEXA scans in all of the whatever almost 2,000 people in these studies. They only did it in like 100 150 in the placebo and active group. And what you'd expect to see is somewhere around maybe like 25 or so percent lean mass loss. So that means like 70 or so percent fat versus lean mass loss, 25 to 30% or so. And but lean mass, fat-free mass, it contains not just skeletal muscle, but fluid and other tissues, organs, and whatever. For some reason, in semaglutide, when they looked at these little groups, again, they got to do bigger studies here, but it looked like it was closer to 40%. It was like 38, 39%. So it was like, what's going on there? Are they losing muscle, or is there something about losing more fluid? What? Because a DEXA scan can't tell you that's exactly skeletal muscle. They're losing it. It's fat-free mass.
Mm-hmm.
And so something in that fat-free mass pool of whatever's in there, fluid, whatever else, it looks like it's losing a little bit more than what we would expect. Versus if you did it even with bariatric surgery for diet and exercise, that type of thing. Now, tirzepatide, on the other hand, which is a more powerful version of semaglutide, it's actually a combination of the GLP-1, one of the incretins, and GIP, that's the other incretin that I talked about. Glucose dependent insulinotropic polypeptide. It's a mouthful, whatever. Anyway, it's a combination. That drug, you lose like 30% more weight loss compared to semaglutide, or what people consider Ozempic, Wegovy. So that's Zepbound Manjaro. That's this new drug. But that one is more around 25%. So why does semaglutide, nobody knows. Everybody's thinking, is there something about the way they studied it? Was it fluid? Is there something about semaglutide that's actually causing atrophy, more catabolic than diet and exercise? Nobody knows. I would say that my patients, again, I'm a selection bias. My patients, I've never seen it happen. They get jacked. They're doing deadlifts. They're doing pull-ups now. Hard to say. I'm not exactly sure. I mean, I just, again, it just gets into like, let's make sure we're just using in the right patient. Because if we're using in the right patient, like, who cares if they lose a little bit more lean mass loss? They just decrease the risk of heart attack. And now they're walking around Disney World not having pain. Having said that, you put it in the person for vanity weight loss and they go on it, lose 10, 15 pounds, go off of it, regain the 10, 15 pounds, go back on it, lose. And like you said, are they going to keep gaining back that muscle every time they regain the weight, or is it having this recomposition to where they're just becoming frailer and frailer and frailer? I can't answer the question. Has not been done. This is where the principles of losing weight and keeping it off get it. Like, no matter what, I'm like, resistance training twice a week at least. Honestly, if it could be more, it'd be better. Moderate to high protein diet, no matter what. Only use the medicine when indicated. That should be the answer. Like you said, unfortunately, like, I can't believe there are doctors giving it out for vanity weight loss and doing it like without even worrying about that. I don't know. It's a crazy world we live in. I don't know.
It's maybe they'll just start giving out the bathtub stuff and
that would be better, as long as they're not giving out the but I have a feeling they're giving out the good stuff.
I'm sure that they are. Ultimately, I think that where the real conversation here lives in the future is where is the irresponsible line? And that to me is a legitimately nuanced and worthwhile conversation to be having, everywhere. Dr. Nadolsky, you're the man. Thank you for coming on.
Thanks for having me on, man.
Even if you went to see the Statue of Liberty instead of coming to see me,
I know it was on a boat with my team. But yeah, no, I in the future when we do another one of these, I'll be there in person.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me on.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Active Life Podcast. Please remember, give us a hand, rate it, review it wherever you listen to shows. We are on a mission to humanize the healthcare industry by professionalizing the fitness industry to empower the individual to live a life unlimited by the way that their body looks, feels, or performs. If you are inspired by that mission and want to jump on the wagon, find us anywhere. Active Life Professional on Instagram, Active Life RX on Instagram. Come to me personally at Dr. Sean Pastuch. We want to welcome you onto the train. We want you to be a part of the mission. We want to offer you the opportunity to pursue this right alongside us. We're inspired by your effort, and we hope to help you in your journey. Turn pro.